Hello, everyone. My name is Haseeb Khan, and I am the Director of Innovation and Technology at Tkxel. And today, with me on Better Tech is Jonathan. Jonathan, first of all, thank you very much for taking out the time and speaking with us about your experiences and cloud computing in general.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, before we start, can you please give like a quick intro about yourself for our audience?
Sure. Jonathan Donaldson. I'm a Senior Technical Director in the Office of the CTO at Google Cloud. Been there for about 4.5 years. It's been an exciting time. And before that, I was VP of Engineering at Intel, and then several other, what we would call the enterprise IT side of things. I spent time at Cisco, EMC, NetApp, VCE. So a lot of enterprise IT vendor side of things.
Yeah, so that's, an amazing introduction, I must say. Going through all these various organizations, these big giants. So, can you like briefly touch upon like how your role has progressed in these companies and how it ended up on the cloud side in Google?
Yeah, I think, as I was kind of getting ready to have this conversation with you, I was kind of contemplating a little bit about, when I look back through my history, like what's always driven me and what's always interested in me. And it's always been around kind of emerging technologies, right? And having those be exposed to people, having them be understood and adopted, right? That's the thing I'm typically very passionate about. And so if you kind of look back through my history of, being a, individual contributor, right? Kind of what we call a technical marketing engineer, which you would call kind of a solutions architect type person today, way back at Cisco, and then different growing through, being a manager and then senior manager, director. It's always been around kind of these emerging technology spaces, things like voice over IP, networking, security, just all sorts of things that, were kind of brand new at the time, and then trying to help people adopt those. And I think that that's kind of continued in through that, right? Kind of culminating right now on where I am in the cloud space, which is, again, kind of a new technology filled with brand new technologies itself over the past several years. And so I think that's kind of how I've grown through the ranks there, is just, being really passionate about the technology, keeping my hands in it day to day, and then really trying to drive other people to use it.
That's awesome. So, in your latest role in Google, that revolves around cloud computing, right? So if you would like to, define cloud computing in your own words for like a layman or, some beginner, how would you do that?
Yeah, I think, everybody has their own definition for what cloud computing is. I think, simply to me, it's the access to resources like, compute, storage, networking, the ones that we always think about, along with kind of new technologies like machine learning, security, and analytics that are typically beyond the capabilities of what a normal company could financially provide to its developers themselves. And so I think, when I think about cloud computing, that's the way I think about it. It's this access to these resources that normally a company couldn't provide for themselves.
Right. So, we have been like seeing that the technology is uplifting itself, or it's growing or expanding on a constant basis, right? And there are new trends, new technologies, and everything is coming up at a pretty fast speed. So in your experience or in your vision, how do you see what some of the upcoming biggest trends in cloud computing would be?
Yeah, I think, there's a long time, maybe the past 3 to 4 years where there was a lot of kind of industry discussion about, who's going to be the quote unquote winner in the cloud wars and things like that. Then I think that they've missed the point. I think the biggest trend that we're going to see kind of in cloud is, that multi-cloud is the new normal, right? There are some workloads that are going to be in your data center. Then you're going to pick, right? You're going to pick the cloud that you want a specific workload to be in based upon some specialization or capability that they have, right? It's very rare today that we go and we buy, one piece of hardware from one vendor if you're an enterprise IT staff, right? Or one piece of software from one vendor, right? You typically buy kind of the best of breed, right? We've had that term for a long time. And I think you're going to see the same thing in multi-cloud, right? If you want a cloud that's really good at machine learning, you're going to place workloads that require machine learning in that cloud. If you need, large scale databases, you're going to place workloads there that rely on that, or analytics. I think enterprises are going to do the multi-cloud thing, not only for that specialization, but also for the continued pricing pressure, right? Nobody wants to have just one vendor that like kind of has them by the throat, right? They want to be able to leverage, the competitive pricing between the different vendors to, get the best price for their business.
Right. So essentially, I mean, if we put things into perspective, I noticed that you actually were shying away for taking some names, but since I can, I can sort of use it. But I mean, sort of, if you can say that there are like multiple clouds in an infrastructure of an enterprise. So maybe if they find that the databases of one particular cloud X, so cloud provider X is good at that. However, I mean, if we talk about clustering or auto scaling, the other one is good, right? So they are basically going to pick the specialized services of each cloud and then merge them together or mesh them together to actually come up with a solution that has the best of all the clouds instead of having like one all around or one all round cloud in place, right?
Yeah, and I think you're seeing this kind of play out in a couple of different ways. One of them is you're seeing the various cloud providers kind of introduce kind of specialized processors and accelerators to kind of highlight the thing that they're really good at to kind of drive the right pricing for that. And then I think the other kind of reflection on that we see in the industry is you're starting to see this emergence of kind of cross-cloud control planes. Anthos that we have, Upbound, Tanzu, Rancher, et cetera. They're really kind of look to reduce that operational burden for IT staffs when they have to do, and because they're going to do multi-cloud, trying to tool up for, placing workloads on Cloud A, like AWS, or Cloud B, like Google Cloud or Cloud C, like, Azure, right? It becomes very, very complex and difficult having to have all that different tooling. And so we're starting to see this big emergence of kind of this, this cross-cloud control plane so that they can tool once and deploy it in the right place to get access to those resources that they're looking for, whether it be, databases.
So I mean, really what you're talking about is generic workloads where, or something that, that a workload can be defined in a fashion or infrastructure can be laid down in a way that it can be cloud agnostic, you can say.
Yeah.
Rolled out to any cloud and then merged.
Exactly. I think it's kind of the next instantiation of kind of the infrastructure as code concept that I'm sure you've probably talked to lots of people on your podcast around that. It's been, kind of really top of mind for the past several years.
Yep.
I think the next, and typically that would be focused on kind of one provider, right? You're going to write a file for deployment of a workload, and you're going to place that against, Amazon, or you're going to place that against Google or Azure. I think the next step in that is you just write the workload, and then the cross-cloud control plane figures out the best place to place it.
Yeah. So, these days, if we talk about infrastructure or applications in general, cloud is the first thing that people talk about. Like if we roll out a solution or a SaaS product or anything, generally the first question is that which cloud this application is hosting. So the world really is moving towards a cloud first approach, right? So, but it at times is very difficult to get customers on board with this particular concept. So how does the pitch of having an application or a system available on cloud, or maybe pitching cloud first approach, is going to gain the confidence of the customer, what they really think when we say that, okay, this platform is cloud first?
Yeah, I think, if we're talking about, kind of keying off a little bit of what you said, kind of in the beginning of that question, is kind of the difficulty, right? In, this kind of cloud first, right? What helps customers really kind of figure that out and gain their confidence? And I think, one of the interesting things is in the CTO office where I work for Google Cloud is we don't really get involved so much in like the pitch part, right? So typically we're coming in where the customer has some big business problem or technical problem that they want to solve, right? And where we think that we could co-innovate on kind of a disruptive technology in their space. And that's typically where we get involved. And so, it's usually the promise of the outcome of that working together that, and the excitement of kind of what's going to be created for their business, right? That brings, the two parties together, brings both us together. And, kind of through that excitement and kind of the proof of the value of, moving to the cloud, right? That's really what gets them on board. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that we typically see like the, hey, I would just like to kind of go move to the cloud because I think it's cheaper kind of thing, right? It's really, although we do hear that, and I think that that's kind of the wrong way to think about cloud. It's typically, I want to move to the cloud because there's some kind of increased capability or customer intimacy or mm-hmm. Some kind of enhancement to my product that I want to do that I think the cloud can deliver for me. And so, kind of wrap that up, I think most companies are past the pitching part. I think people understand cloud. I think what we have to do as cloud providers is show them the value of moving to the cloud. Mm-hmm. It's over and above just the it's going to save me money, because typically it doesn't.
Right. So if we talk about the future of the cloud, then 5G, people are like generally saying that these new technologies, especially 5G, is going to be the next big thing, right? So what, in your opinion, 5G is, or how it would intersect with the cloud in the future?
Yeah, I think 5G, predominantly an access technology, which I think is great, right? Lower latency, higher bandwidth.
Yep.
I think that's going to basically, and hopefully more ubiquity, right? Everywhere. I think that's going to end up giving kind of richer experiences, right? It's to end users, to consumers. It's going to bring compute closer to them, right? So if you're using, let's say, a phone or a watch or, an augmented reality type of headset, right? Those typically, although they've become more and more powerful every year, right? For those kind of fully immersive experiences, or for those kind of, heavy machine learning decisions, having that the high bandwidth, low latency connection back to some sort of edge type computing in the cloud, right, is really going to bring kind of that experience home for them, because they're not even going to realize it's happening. They're just going to get this, really, really rich experience through their devices that they may not have had before because of, lower bandwidth, or higher latency types of connections. So I think it's going to really bring compute and the consumer closer together.
Absolutely.
And that's really not even touching on kind of, the whole IoT aspect of that, which is, a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. So what I figured is that, you are really excited about 5G. So it must be very exciting for you. But is there something about 5G which troubles you as well?
Yeah, I think, the thing that troubles me the most about potentially with 5G is I am afraid that we're going to see another uneven rollout of 5G, like we did kind of in the early, GSM versus CDMA days.
Right.
So for those of you out there in our audience that aren't kind of intimate with cellular technologies, right? Mm-hmm. GSM was kind of one standard, CDMA was the other. And you had handsets that wouldn't work on one network versus the other, and you had roaming issues and all sorts of different things. And so that caused a lot of confusion in the consumer space. And that confusion really slowed down adoption of kind of, these newer technologies, and really kind of create a lot of, shaken confidence in the actual experiences themselves. And that typically ended up in the laps of the people that created the applications themselves. Like, why isn't this working as well, 20 miles away from my home as it does in my own home, right? Sure. And so I think that's my biggest worry, is just that we have kind of some, within 5G, some internally competing standards on wavelengths and, different capabilities that, if rolled out unevenly across the world, will really kind of, slow the adoption of the things that are going to rely upon it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you touched upon 5G and IoT both. So do you
Yep.
think that these two things can actually work together, or can be coupled together to accelerate cloud business investment and growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, outside of kind of the enrichment of the kind of the consumer experience, we're seeing, with IoT, right, there's all sorts of different, IoT is kind of a big catchphrase, right? There's industrial IoT. So, having, let's say, drones or on manufacturing lines or pipelines, right? Kind of the big industrial manufacturing spaces, right? Where you'll have 5G as connection to those. So you'll get, much better real-time monitoring of, different types of, events that would happen in your business. Tagging of pallets and basically being able to understand kind of real-time warehousing situations and logistics, right? There's a ton of different use cases that IoT coupled with 5G and kind of the immediacy of that reporting will give to businesses. And I think that's going to be really powerful. If you're in a business that can be enriched by being closer to either the customer, right? And or production capabilities where real-time data and analytics can enhance, right, your decision-making or enhance your product for better intimacy with the customer or, better, just-in-time ordering.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be very, very powerful business for businesses as they kind of build, better pipelines for this data and insights, and then wrapping that into kind of, either amazing customer experiences, right, or into, insights that will drive their business, right, to better outcomes. Yeah, I think it's going to be huge.
Okay.
Especially, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was, the last thing I want to do is if you think I'm a big science fiction fan, as kind of a lot of us in tech typically are. If you think about every modern sci-fi movie, TV show, or book that you've read, you never see them thinking about the connection, right? Whether it be from whatever it is that they're using to access.
It's always working.
It's just always working, right? And it's always there, and it's always fast.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the goal of what we want to see with 5G is we want to see that ubiquity of communication availability. It should always be there. It should always be fast, right? And it should bring those experiences to you. Obviously, without all the crazy stuff that we do see in sci-fi too.
Yeah. So essentially, no matter where you are in space or on Mars or wherever you are, right. Just click a button and boom, the video is always there.
Exactly. I think that's what we'd all love to see with 5G, and hopefully that's what will happen.
Right. So yeah, I believe that we have touched enough of the technical topics. Now we can steer the conversation more towards your experiences, your career. So there are different leadership styles out there for directors, for CTOs, for VPs, etc. So how would you say that your leadership style is, and is it impacted by the world that we are in right now, like in the pandemic, where there's something that is called a new normal, and it's a changed world now. So how would you talk about it?
Yeah, I think, my leadership style has kind of, grown with me through the years. I think as I look back on kind of the influential managers that I've had and leaders that I've had, I've kind of adopted bits and pieces of their style. I would say one of the things that I think really kind of defines my style is I like to be very, very transparent. Right? I like people that work for me and with me to kind of really know what we're trying to accomplish and why, and kind of how that helps the company and how that helps our career, right? Give an example, when I was at Intel, we did this big board presentation to kind of define what we were going to go do for the group that I led. And then, typically that's, in most organizations, that's kind of the last you see of that once you get the go ahead. But actually, use that board presentation, redacted a little bit of the sensitive information there. And I use that with every engineer that we brought into my team, right? The most junior just out of college engineer or the most senior director level person that we hired from somewhere else, and kind of really walk them through the whys and the whats, and, let them figure out the how we're going to accomplish it, but really kind of, tried to use that to kind of lay out for them, here's why we're doing what we're doing. Here's how it's going to benefit the company. Here's how it's going to benefit you. Here's your part in this. I think that type of leadership style really sets the right cultural tone for a group or a team.
Sure.
So that's probably the way that that I like to do things. Is you become much less of a tell somebody what to do type of leader, which I don't think anybody really enjoys as much as being a player coach, and kind of if everybody kind of knows what the goal is, right? Where the depending upon your sports preference, where the goal is, or the net or whatever else, then it's much more of a playing on the team together to get there than it is kind of telling someone what to go do. So I think that's kind of in a nutshell my leadership style has grown through the years. Video conferencing, right, is rough. As I think the new normal, people do enjoy working from home. And I think we've all proven that this can happen, right? And the productivity seems to still be at levels that we would have liked them to be. I do think that video conferencing is a poor substitute for sitting in front of a whiteboard with someone, or having a cup of coffee with them, or having dinner together, right? Or other kind of social interactions. I think a lot of the connection is lost when you're just seeing somebody through a screen, and I think the fatigue is much higher. There's been a lot of studies recently around, kind of the fatigue from video conferencing. And so I think, for me, that's been the biggest impact is trying to figure out ways to keep the connection with my team and with others. And I think that, kind of the new normal I'd love to see is a mixture of in-person and, video conferencing.
Hybrid, you would say.
Hybrid. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the ultimate goal is, being able to have that space where you can, have the social with people you work with, and also, having the best of kind of the, being able to work from home.
Right. So in the end, in the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned about looking back at your career, right? And then before the conversation that we are having, and that how your career has progressed over time from like a junior person to a senior one. So if you are given a chance to go back and rerun this whole thing, what you would like to do differently in your career?
Yeah, I would have started a technology education business. Just kidding. I think time and time again, it's the education of people that's been the biggest barrier to adoption of new technologies, right? So I was, early in when I was at Cisco on the voice over IP conversion, right? When, everybody in their enterprise businesses had these big, PBXs from Siemens and Nortel, and, they were paying, millions of dollars a year for these things. And then, with Cisco, when they had bought Celsius and kind of started rolling out this packetized voice over IP and kind of started to replace those. I remember being in so many meetings that, we'd walk in, and the left side of the table would be, kind of the PBX administrators, the right side of the table would be the network administrators, and they didn't like each other. And the CFO would be at the end of the table. And the CFO is like, we have to figure this out. We're going to go to voice over IP, right? It's going to save us, hundreds of thousands a year, millions a year, whatever it was, figure it out. And, the PBX people would just be like, no way are you going to run that voice across, there's no way you're going to take, our mission critical voice and run it across that Ethernet stuff. And the networking people are like, yeah, it's just another application to us. And, there'd be this big battle, and we'd walk out of the room, and inevitably, there'd be one person that, once all of it, from the PBX team, once all of his colleagues left, he'd kind of sneak up and look around, and they would be like, so if somebody wanted to learn more about this voice over IP, how would we do that? And I want to, that really stuck with me, those types of engagements, because, with each new emerging technology, we're asking somebody to give up their value to their company, right? So if I'm the person that's, invested lots and lots of time in understanding a specific technology that's maybe now a legacy technology, it's the old, I know where to kick the mainframe type of concept. If I've spent all of this time figuring that out, and then a new technology comes along, of course, I'm going to dig my heels in on the change, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my value to the company. And so if we'd just done a better job of educating people on these new technologies, allowing them to transition themselves from the old technology to the new technology.
Right.
I think the adoption cycles for these new technologies would have been much, much quicker. Voice over IP, converged infrastructure, cloud, right? There's just a whole, and that's probably not even touching, a tenth of them. But I think if you look back through all of these big transitions, if we'd just done a better job of educating people that, maybe were the tops of their fields in, kind of a legacy technology to the new technology, we would have been much more successful.
Right. So in the end, Jonathan, I would really like to thank you on the behalf of Better Tech to take out the time and speaking with their audience about your experiences and cloud in general. So once again, thanks a lot, and I look forward to hosting you again sometime in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you, Haseeb, for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.